For almost 40 years, one man's shadow has loomed larger over Iran than anyone else's. And note, it wasn't the original revolutionary founder. It was a master survivor, a political operator, a system builder named Ali Khamenei. He's a figure of huge consequence, full of contradictions. And honestly, to understand Iran today, you absolutely have to understand him.
To really get a handle on Khamenei, you have to start with the two completely opposite ways people see him. For his supporters, he was the guy, the guardian who protected Iran's independence and its revolutionary soul. But for his critics, well, they saw him as the architect of a brutal system that crushed the dreams of his own people. And that conflict, right there, that's the key to his entire story.
And what a story it was. I mean, we're talking a long time. He was supreme leader for 37 years. Think about that. A reign that stretched across generations. It's longer than most Iranians have even been alive. That sheer amount of time is so crucial to understanding how he built and cemented his power. So how did it all get started?
To find the roots of who he became, you got to go way back to his early life, long before he had any real power. He wasn't born into some military family or incredible wealth. His beginnings were actually pretty modest.
He was born in the holy city of Mashhad, the son of a cleric. So his family wasn't wealthy, but they were religiously important. He was on that classic path, studying to be a Shiite cleric. But a really key part of his identity was his lineage as a Seyyed.
So what does Seyyed actually mean? Well, basically, it signals that you're a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad himself. This gives you a whole lot of prestige and respect, and it's often symbolized by that black turban he always wore. It wasn't political power, not yet, but it was a big deal in terms of religious and social standing.
But the single most important connection of his life wasn't about who he was born to. It was about who he met. In the seminary city of Qom, he came into the circle of a man who would one day topple a king and completely change Iran, Ruhollah Khomeini. And that relationship, it would literally set the course for the rest of his life.
Okay, so fast forward to after the 1979 revolution. The new Islamic Republic was, well, it was chaos. It was a really dangerous place to be, especially if you were in power. For those guys, just surviving was a full-time job. And it was in this fire of violence and war that Khamenei really proved he was tough and loyal.
And man, did he climb the ladder fast. He was on the Revolutionary Council, he was in charge of the IRGC for a bit, and he served as president during that horrible 8-year war with Iraq. He wasn't some charismatic speaker, but he made himself absolutely essential by digging himself deep into the guts of the new state security machine. Then, in 1981, something happened that changed him forever. A bomb, hidden inside a tape recorder, exploded right in front of him. It paralyzed his right arm for the rest of his life. You could see the physical scar, obviously, but the psychological wound was way deeper. It created this intense paranoia, a deep distrust of everyone and everything, that really became the signature of how he ruled.
So when Khomeini died in 1989, Khamenei was not the obvious choice to take over. He didn't even have the senior religious rank that the job was supposed to require. And that brings us to the real puzzle of his career.
He basically inherited the top job from a position of weakness. So how on earth did he turn that shaky start into nearly 4 decades of absolute, untouchable power? Well, the answer is in a series of very deliberate, very methodical moves.
It's like a playbook. First, he gets the office. Then, conveniently, the Constitution gets changed to fit his lower religious rank. Smart, right? From there, he just systematically pumps up the power of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, builds a massive financial empire, and makes sure he has the final say on every single important job in the country.
Let's just pause on that financial empire for a second. An investigation back in 2013 estimated that this economic network he controlled, called Seyyed, was worth a staggering $95 billion. Yeah, billion with a B.
And here's why that number matters so much.
This huge pot of money gave his office total financial independence. It was completely separate from the national budget, from parliament, from any elected president. It basically made him untouchable from inside the system.
The other pillar of his power was the IRGC. Now, Khomeini created it, but Khamenei completely transformed it. Under him, it stopped being just a military force. He built it into this massive political, economic, and intelligence monster whose first loyalty was to him and his office, not to the country. It was the absolute backbone of his regime.
So he's got this bulletproof system in place. Now what? Well, he puts it to work. And his strategy had two very clear sides: Project Power and resistance outside of Iran, while cracking down with total control and repression at home.
But here's the thing. His rule was constantly being challenged by his own people. You had the massive Green Movement protests in 2009, then the deadly economic protests in 2019, and then the huge nationwide Woman Life Freedom uprising in 2022. Each wave of protests got bigger and more fundamental than the one before it.
And the regime's response? It was always brutal. During just the 2022 protests, reports say that over 500 people, including dozens of children, were killed by security forces. When he had to choose between compromise and force, Khamenei always chose force.
You could see his tactical brain at work on the world stage too, especially when it came to the nuclear program. Publicly, he'd issue a religious ruling, a fatwa, against nuclear weapons, while at the same time insisting on Iran's right to enrich uranium. But the real goal was always the same: use the program as a bargaining chip to keep his regime safe.
And his big foreign policy idea was the axis of resistance. He poured billions into this network of proxy groups all over the Middle East. For his supporters, this made Iran a serious regional power. But for his critics, it was just a massively expensive project that sucked money out of the country to fund endless wars.
Towards the end, this whole system he built started to come under incredible pressure from both inside Iran and from the outside world. The end of his rule wasn't just the end of a leader, it was the end of an era, leaving behind a state built in his image and a legacy that people will be fighting over for a very, very long time.
And this brings us right back to where we started, doesn't it? Was he the guy who preserved Iran's independence, who stood up to the big world powers and kept the revolution going? Or was he the one who destroyed the hopes of his own people, who hollowed out the republic just to hold on to power? The answer, it seems, really depends on who you ask.
His entire life's project was to make sure the Islamic Republic would survive long after he was gone. He carefully built this web of institutions, security forces, and economic levers, all designed to keep going. But that leaves us with one final and really crucial question. He built a system to outlast any single person. But can that system, in the end, outlast the will of its